Hello, my name's Ryan. I'm 23 and I live just outside Portland, Oregon. I'm not exactly a city slicker, but I'm close enough to feel the buzz when I need it. I work as an electrician, not one of those guys just winging it with a wrench and hope. I actually went through the training, got my certification, and landed a spot with a small local outfit. We're no corporate giant, but we've got steady gigs coming in. On most days, I knock out 2 or 3 service calls, just enough to keep the lights on at home, stash a little away, and hold on to that dream of starting my own business one day. That particular morning, nothing special. I had 2 jobs lined up. First stop was an office building, just a dead wall outlet, simple stuff. Then dispatch pinged me about a second call. A woman just outside the city needed someone to check out the lights in her garage, seen they'd been flickering on and off without warning. It wasn't urgent, but she wanted it handled that day. I typed the address into my GPS and hit the road. The neighborhood was tucked away from the main drag, quiet streets, big houses, perfectly trimmed lawns. When I pulled up, I slowed down for a second, just taking it in. The place was a sleek, modern 2-story with a wide driveway and a black gate already swung open like it was expecting me. It looked expensive, not the type of home I usually get called to. I parked, grabbed my gear, and walked up the drive toward the garage entrance. Just as I got close, the side door opened. Out stepped a woman, tall, maybe late 20s, early 30s, with dark hair tied back in a loose ponytail. She had on jeans and a fitted tee, nothing flashy, but it suited her. Still, it wasn't just about how she looked, it was something in the way she moved. Confident, graceful. She gave me a quick glance, barely looked up from her phone. "You here for the garage lights?" she asked, flat and to the point. "Yeah," I said. "Ryan from Cascade Electric. You mentioned they've been acting up." She nodded, motioning toward the garage. "They cut out every time I open the door. Sometimes they kick back on, sometimes they don't." "It's irritating. All right, I'll take a look." She didn't say much after that, just turned around and went back through the interior door leading into the house. I dropped my toolbox and got to work. Didn't take long to figure out the problem. The wiring on the motion sensor was old and sloppy. Looked like whoever installed it didn't care to do it right. I shut off the breaker, took out the busted unit, cleaned up the mess, and installed a proper sensor with new housing. All in all, it took me about 2 hours, maybe a little more with testing. The whole time, not a word from her. No chit-chat, no check-ins, just quiet. When I finished, I packed up my tools, flipped the breaker back on, and ran a few more tests. The lights worked perfectly. I knocked on the door and waited. A few seconds passed, then she reappeared, this time without the phone. She walked right over, glanced at the lights as they clicked on, and gave me the smallest smile. "Well," finally she said, "they actually work." "Yeah," I nodded. "Turned out to be a wiring issue. Swapped out the sensor too, just to be safe. You should be good now." She crossed her arms and tilted her head, studying me for a second. "You're good at this." "Thanks," I said, genuinely glad to hear it. Then came the curveball. "You know," she said, "you're pretty handsome." That caught me off guard. I blinked, let out a short, awkward laugh. Thanks." Her smile softened. This time it felt sincere. Not like a joke or a tease, like she meant it. Then she leaned casually against the doorframe. "So, Ryan, what do you do when you're not fixing things?" That question surprised me even more. Sure, I've had friendly clients before, but nothing quite like this. "Honestly," I said, "not a whole lot. Work keeps me busy. I'm more of a quiet evenings kind of guy. Don't really go out much." She nodded like that actually made sense to her. That's refreshing. I'm not big on the social scene either. And that really threw me. She didn't look like someone who spent her weekends on the couch. She looked like someone who belonged in VIP lounges or on the deck of some private yacht. But the way she said it, it sounded real. She went on. "People see a certain look and they assume things. It gets old fast." I gave a slow nod, not sure how to respond. Then she said something that really threw me. "I know this is random, but would you want to hang out this weekend?" I froze for just a second. "Hang out?" I asked. She smiled again, a little more playful now. "Yeah, you and me, somewhere nice, somewhere quiet. You don't have to give me an answer right this second." I hesitated just a moment, then nodded. "I'd like that." Her smile grew just a touch wider. "Cool, I'll text you the details. Appreciate the fix with the lights." She said, then just turned and headed back inside, like she'd flipped a switch and vanished into another world, leaving me standing there, half stunned. I climbed into my car, shut the door, and sat there in silence for a minute. What the hell just happened? The rest of that day felt like I was floating through it, like everything around me was happening in slow motion, and I wasn't quite part of it. I made it to my second job, fixed a blown outlet in some guy's workshop, made polite small talk, and kept glancing at my phone every 15 minutes like some guy waiting on a life-changing call. But nothing. No missed calls. No texts, not even a thanks again, just silence. I didn't even know her name. I'd done the whole job clean and professional, didn't ask anything personal. Then, right at the end, she dropped that question like a bomb. "You want to hang out this weekend?" And I said yes, just like that. By the time Friday came around, I still hadn't heard a word. I started wondering if maybe she hadn't meant it. Maybe it was just a polite throwaway line, or worse, some rich person's little dare. Like a story she'd laugh about with her friends later. You'll never guess I asked my electrician out. I tried to brush it off, telling myself not to read into it. People say weird things all the time. But then just after noon on Friday, my phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. "Hey, it's Angela. From the lights? Still up for Saturday? I'll pick you up. Noon, drop a pin." My stomach did a full somersault. I didn't even realize I'd been holding my breath until I let it out. Angela. So that was her name, and she hadn't forgotten. I didn't think too hard about it. Just sent her the location of a public parking lot outside a hardware store. Not my house, but not far. Middle ground. She replied with a simple thumbs up. That next morning, I was ready way earlier than I needed to be. Tried on 3 different shirts, all basically the same. Cleaned up my boots. Even shaved, which I never do on weekends. But for some reason, I felt like I had to show up looking sharp, still me, just the cleaner version. I got to the lot before 11:45 and sat on the curb pretending to scroll through my phone, casually watching every car that pulled in, like a guy waiting for a blind date he couldn't picture. At 12:02, I heard the low growl of something fast and expensive. I looked up. There she was, rolling in behind the wheel of a silver Porsche 911 Turbo. Top down, sunglasses on, her hair catching the breeze like a scene from a movie. I swear everyone in that lot turned to look at her, and then at me, standing there, like the delivery guy who got invited into the penthouse. She waved casually. "Ryan." I gave a small nod and opened the passenger door. "That's me." She flashed a grin. "Hop in." The seats felt like butter-soft premium leather, the kind you only ever see in car ads. She smelled like fresh citrus and something high-end I couldn't quite place. As we pulled onto the highway, I finally asked, "So, where exactly are we going?" "There's this spot I visit when I need to breathe a little." She said, "I think you'll like it." "I promise." We drove for a good 40 minutes, winding through hills patches of dense forest and then on to tighter back roads. Eventually, she turned down a gravel path that curved into a wooded area. I started to hear the sound of water before I saw anything. She parked the car and we followed a short trail on foot, maybe 5 minutes, until the trees opened up around us. A small waterfall spilled into a clear, still pool surrounded by tall rocks and trees that looked like they scraped the sky. It was breathtaking, peaceful, strong in a quiet kind of way. I glanced over at her. She wasn't smiling exactly, but her face was soft, settled like she'd finally exhaled. "This place," she said in a calm voice, "it makes me feel small, but in a good way." We sat on a wide, flat rock a little ways back from the water spray. She slid off her sandals and dipped her feet into the water. I did the same. It was cold, shockingly cold, but it woke me up in the best way. Still looking ahead, she said, "I bet I know what you're thinking." "Do you?" I asked, curious. "Yeah. You're wondering why someone like me would ask someone like you to come out here." I stayed quiet. She wasn't wrong. She kept her eyes on the ripples in the pool. "My dad runs a massive logistics company. My mom, she's in charge of HR there. Our house was fully paid off before I even hit double digits. Private schools, fancy cars, the whole cliche." I didn't interrupt. She kept going. "Thing is, everyone's always seen me as a label. The rich girl, the polished one. Guys like the idea of me. Girls either wanted to be me or hated my guts." She paused, then added quietly, "I never felt like anyone actually saw me. Not for real. Until I met someone who didn't even know my last name." "You mean me?" I asked, cautious. She nodded once. "You didn't ask about my background. You didn't try to flirt or show off. You just did the job, said thanks, left. That's rare. I didn't know what to say to that. So I said the only honest thing I could think of. I kind of figured you were playing a joke on me, just messing around." She finally turned her eyes toward me. "I get that," she said softly, but I wasn't. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It felt intentional, like we were both thinking carefully. Then she gave me the smallest smile. "I'm not asking for anything heavy. I just wanted to talk to someone who doesn't want anything from me." "You got it," I said, no strings. She nodded. "Thanks." We ended up sitting there for over an hour, talking, laughing, swapping dumb stories. It was the calmest I'd felt in a long time, like something inside me had finally exhaled. Eventually, as the sun started to dip lower behind the trees, she stood and brushed the gravel from her jeans. "Time to head back," she said. "Yeah," I replied. "But I'm really glad you brought me here." The drive back was quiet, but in the best way. No music, no awkwardness, just the sound of the wind rushing by and the road humming beneath us. She dropped me off right where she picked me up in that same parking lot. I reached for the door, then hesitated and looked back at her. "Do you think I'll see you again?" She didn't answer right away. Then, with a little smirk, she said, "Maybe if you call me." I stepped out, shut the door gently, and stood there watching her drive away until her taillights vanished into the distance. And right then it hit me. Whatever that had been, it wasn't just a casual hangout. It hadn't been a date either. Not exactly, but it was something. A beginning, maybe. I just didn't know of what. The days that followed had a different feel to them. I was still on my usual grind, fixing outlets, replacing old panels, resetting trip breakers, but it wasn't the same routine anymore. Angela had carved out a space in my thoughts, not in a loud, overwhelming way, but more like a quiet melody that just kept playing in the background. She stayed on my mind, constant, steady, always there. But what threw me was the silence. No texts, no calls, not even a quick thanks again. It's not like I expected her to blow up my phone or anything, but after how real she'd been by the waterfall, I figured there'd be something. Hey, I had a good time. A silly meme, anything, but the silence stuck around. And with it came doubt. Maybe she just needed someone to talk to that day. Maybe I was just a one-time sounding board. A guy from a different world who happened to be easy to talk to. Maybe that was the whole point, but something inside me wouldn't let it go. Maybe it was the way she looked at me just before I got out of her car. Or the way she said, "Maybe if you call me," like she was handing me the ball and stepping off the court. So I called her. It was the following Friday. I was sitting in my car outside a hardware store, sipping some awful coffee and trying to pretend I wasn't nervous. I pulled out my phone, found her name, and tapped it. She picked up on the third ring. "Hey," she said. Her voice was warm, easy, like no time had passed at all. "Hey, it's Ryan," I know she said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. "I was hoping you'd call." I let out a slow breath I didn't even realize I'd been holding. "Would you want to meet again?" I asked. "This time, I'll plan something." She paused for a moment, then said, "I'd like that." We picked Sunday afternoon. I told her I'd come get her this time. She didn't ask what we were doing, just said, "Okay, I'll be ready." Truthfully, I had no idea what someone like Angela would expect from a second meeting. But I knew what I wanted it to be, honest, simple, something that actually mattered. So I planned a picnic. Yeah, a real one. I borrowed an old blanket from my mom, made some sandwiches, packed up fruit, and threw in a couple of glass bottles of lemonade. Even bought a small cooler just for the occasion. Then I went online and rented a car, not flashy, not junky, just something clean and solid. A silver 2018 Camry. Sunday rolled around and I pulled up to her place. That same big house with the wide driveway and sleek modern windows. She was already waiting outside on the steps wearing a soft blue hoodie and black leggings. No makeup. No sunglasses, no Porsche in sight. She walked over with a relaxed smile and slid into the passenger seat. "Hey, picnic boy," I laughed. "Ready for a surprise always," she said. We drove about 30 minutes out of town heading to this open field near the edge of an old oak forest, a place my dad used to take me when I was a kid. There was a clear view of the hills, the sky wide and endless above us, and that rare kind of stillness that reminds you how noisy life usually is. We parked under the shade of a few tall trees, carried everything out, and laid the blanket over the grass. I poured the lemonade into 2 plastic cups while she sat cross-legged watching the clouds drift by. "I can't remember the last time I did something like this," she said. "What a picnic." "No," she said, smiling slightly. "Something that wasn't curated or staged or meant for social media." She paused and looked around. "This feels real." We sat there for a while, eating, laughing about how terrible I was, at peeling oranges, swapping random stories about childhood crazy clients, favorite songs. There was no effort, no pressure. She wasn't trying to impress me, and I wasn't trying to win her over. We were just present. Then there was this quiet moment. She was staring off into the trees, sunlight falling across her face, just right. She turned to me slow and thoughtful. "You know what I liked most about the other day?" "What's that?" I asked. "You didn't look at me like you wanted something. Not money, not attention, not even validation. You just looked at me." I felt my throat tighten. Didn't quite know what to say. Then she leaned forward just a little. and I met her halfway. The kiss was soft, unrushed, nothing dramatic. Just real. That kiss felt like a quiet agreement, like we both reached the same page without needing to say a single word. When we finally pulled back, she smiled softly and said, "I was hoping you'd do that. I wasn't sure I had it in me," I admitted. "You're kind of intimidating," she laughed. "I know. That's the point. Keeps the wrong kind of people away." We stayed out there another hour just lying on the blanket, letting the wind stir the trees above us. As the sky started turning gold, she reached over and took my hand. "I don't know exactly what this is," she said, voice low, "but I like it." "Same here," I told her. The drive back was mostly quiet, but not in an awkward way. More like we were both still holding on to the peace of that moment. When we reached her place, she didn't have me stop at the gate this time. We pulled all the way up to the front door. Before getting out, she turned to me. "Text me," she said, "anytime." And just like that, she was gone. I sat there for a second longer, breathing in the faint scent of lemon and lavender still floating through the air. I didn't know what this thing between us would turn into, but I was sure it wasn't a fluke. It meant something now. The next few days had a lightness to them. Nothing huge had changed, but it was like waking up without a weight on your chest. Work didn't feel like a grind anymore. The drive between calls felt less like killing time and more like moving forward. I started texting Angela more. Not anything fancy, just little moments honest and goofy. Me just fixed the ceiling fan one-handed while holding a flashlight in my mouth. Not bragging, just saying, local hero status confirmed. Her spilled coffee on a silk blouse during a Zoom meeting with 12 people. Top that. We traded laughs, send each other songs, photos of clouds that look like things. Like kids sharing secrets through phone screens. It felt like we were building something real without rushing to name it. And yet a part of me still wasn't sure where I stood. She was wealthy, gorgeous, self-assured. I was just me, a blue-collar guy with calloused hands and steel-toed boots. The idea that she might choose me over anyone else in her world felt almost unreal. Then 1 week after that picnic, she sent late-night text on a Thursday. "Angela, you free tomorrow night?" Me technically always free, emotionally mysterious, professionally underpaid. "What's up, Angela, come over. My parents are out of town for a week. I want to show you something." That was the first time she actually invited me inside. Really inside. Not the garage, not the front steps, the real her. I hesitated for half a second, then replied, "Me, I'll be there." Friday evening, I pulled up in my usual jeans and the cleanest black button-up I owned. The sun was low in the sky, casting a soft golden line across her driveway. The front door was already open. She stood in the entry barefoot, wearing an oversized knit sweater and leggings, hair twisted into a messy bun, no makeup. She looked peaceful. "Hey," she said with a small smile, stepping aside. "Come in." I stepped into the foyer, and for a second I just looked around. The place was stunning, high ceilings, wide glass walls, modern design. But it didn't feel sterile or showroom cold. It felt lived in, warm. Hers. She walked me through the house, leading into the kitchen. 2 plates were already set out on the island. Candles flickered between them. "You cooked?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "Sort of." She grinned. "I ordered from a place I like and reheated it. So semi-domestic." We ate out on the patio under soft hanging lights. The air had that crisp bite of evening settling in. She handed me a hoodie, said it used to belong to an ex. I didn't ask questions. We talked like we had on the picnic, easy reel. She told me about her job doing marketing for a startup, trying to rebrand sustainable packaging. I told her about my idea to start a small repair business, one that also trained young guys who didn't want to do college like me. At one point, she stood up and said, "Come on, I want to show you something." She led me upstairs down the hall to a room at the very end. She pushed the door open and I stopped cold. It was an art studio. Canvases leaned against every wall. Some half-finished, others covered, and a few exploding with color and raw emotion. "You paint?" I asked, genuinely surprised. She nodded. "Not for anyone else, just for me." I walked in slow, soaking in the layers and brushstrokes. She stood behind me and said softly, "This is the only place where I feel like me. No makeup, no pressure, no one expecting anything." I turned to face her. "You should feel like that all the time." She met my eyes, and for a moment I saw a crack in that polished armor she always wore. She stepped a little closer. "I don't know what this is between us, Ryan," she said, barely above a whisper. "But when I'm with you, I'm not pretending, and that means something to me." I nodded slowly. "I don't know what it is either, but I think about you all the time." We stood there surrounded by her art, surrounded by everything she'd never said out loud until now. Her truth was all over those walls, and for the first time I felt like I was part of it. I kissed her again, but this time it felt different. There was no uncertainty hanging between us, no awkward pause or hesitation, just something clear, mutual, like we both finally gave ourselves permission to lean in and trust it. Later that night, we ended up on her couch. Legs tangled together, some old movie playing in the background, either of us really watching. She rested her head on my shoulder and said softly, "You're the first person I've let in like this in a long time." I looked down at her and said, "I'm not going anywhere." She gave me a small, almost sad smile. "Don't say that unless you mean it." "I do," I told her. And I meant every single word. At some point, we both drifted off right there on the couch. I woke up around 2 a.m. to the soft sound of rain tapping gently against the windows. She was still there, fast asleep, her hand resting on my chest like it belonged there. I didn't want to move, didn't want to break that moment. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring. Whether the gap between our lives would stretch too wide, whether her world might eventually swallow mine whole. But what I did know was this. For the first time in a long time, I didn't just feel like the guy who shows up to fix the wiring. I felt seen. It's been about 4 months now since the day I first knocked on Angela's garage door. I remember it clearly how she barely looked at me when she let me in. Her voice clipped informal, pointing to the broken lights like I was just another line on a work order. And I was. For a couple hours, that's all I was supposed to be. But somewhere between tangled wires and burnout sensors, something else sparked. We kept seeing each other after that night at her house. Not every single day, we both had lives, jobs, routines, but enough that it started to feel regular. Or more than that, natural. Sunday evenings slowly turned into full weekends. Texts turned into late-night calls, and those early silences, once a little awkward, turned into the kind of quiet that felt comforting. There wasn't some grand moment where one of us made a speech or popped a question. No, so what are we talk? It just unfolded piece by piece. And maybe that's what made it feel so real, but reality's never just one layer. And I learned pretty quickly that being with someone like Angela came with its own set of complications. It started small, just the way people looked at us. You know, the kind when you walk into a restaurant and they recognize her. Not because she's famous or anything, but because she belongs to that circle. Those people look at you like you wandered into the wrong room and accidentally sat down at the VIP table. One night we went to her friend's engagement party. Everyone was decked out in cocktail dresses and fitted suits, sipping fancy drinks and tossing around words like equity shares and launch valuations. I stood there, in my best button-up sipping ginger ale because I was driving, and trying not to look like I was counting down the minutes. Later that night, I told her I felt out of place. She looked me dead in the eye and said, "That's exactly why I brought you, because you're not like them." And I appreciated that. I did. But it didn't always make it easier. It wasn't just her world adjusting to me. I had to shift too. My boss noticed I wasn't as locked in. I started turning down extra service calls not because I was slacking, but because for the first time being somewhere felt more important than doing something. And for a guy who's always measured himself by his work, that was new ground. Angela picked up on it. One night we were at my place. It's nothing fancy, small cluttered, a little rough around the edges, but it's mine. She sat cross-legged on the couch, flipping through an old high school yearbook I didn't even realize I still had. "You've built a good life here," she said genuinely. "It's not much," I replied. "But yeah, it's mine." She looked around the room, the tools stacked by the door, the chipped countertop, that crooked painting I bought for $5 from a thrift store. "I like it," she said, and I believed her. That night we talked about everything, where we were, where we thought we were going. Not in some dreamy fairy tale way, in a grounded adult way. She told me she'd been thinking about stepping back from her corporate job. Said she was tired of chasing metrics and pretending to care about quarterly projections she didn't even believe in. She'd been daydreaming about starting something smaller, something with meaning, maybe something creative. I told her I'd been thinking about finally registering my own repair business, buying a van, getting my name on the side. Not just working for someone, but building something that was truly mine. Then she looked at me and said something I didn't see coming. "What if we built something together?" I blinked. "You mean like us?" She nodded. "Yeah, like us. That was 2 months ago." Since then, things have been shifting in all the right ways. She's been helping me build the foundation of something real. A small brand, a logo, even a basic website. She even threw together a marketing plan that somehow made sense to a guy like me. I'm still out here doing the work. Climbing ladders, crawling under houses, getting paint and dust on my boots. But now it doesn't feel like I'm just fixing things. It feels like I'm building something that might actually last. We're not rushing into anything. We still have our own places, our own mornings, our own bad habits. But we're choosing each other deliberately day after day. And honestly, that choice, that quiet, steady choosing, it means more than any label ever could. Last weekend, we went back to the waterfall. Same place. Same rocks. Same sound of rushing water echoing through the trees, only this time we brought coffee and donuts. I had my arm around her and she leaned her head on my shoulder. We didn't speak much, just sat there listening to the rhythm of the water and the quiet in between. Then she said, "I never thought I'd fall for the guy who came to fix my lights." I laughed. I never thought the woman who owned that house would ask me to stay. She looked up and smiled. "Well, you're more than just the electrician now." I didn't say anything back. I just kissed her on the temple and pulled her a little closer. Because she was right. I'm still Ryan, still 24. Still figuring it all out, one job, one bill, one step at a time. But now I've got someone beside me who doesn't just see what I do, she sees me. And maybe that's the real story here. Not some fairy tale about a rich girl and a working class guy, not the Porsche, not the picnic, not even the kiss. But two people from completely different lives choosing to build something new together. No drama, no fireworks, just something honest, something messy, imperfect, real, and somehow ours.